The arena lights faded into a deep, velvety indigo, casting long, dramatic shadows across the backstage corridor, where the 7 members of BTS gathered after yet another earth-shattering performance. The air was thick with the residual adrenaline of tens of thousands of screaming fans, the scent of expensive stage makeup, and the quiet, heavy breathing of exhausted men who had just given every ounce of their souls to the global stage. Yet behind the polished veneer of worldwide superstardom, a subtle, highly charged dynamic was unfolding, one that the cameras only partially captured, leaving millions of fans frantically rewinding and analyzing every single frame. To understand the magnitude of what happened next, one must first look at the intricate web of brotherhood, unspoken rivalries, and unbreakable bonds that have held BTS together through a decade of unprecedented history. Jin, the eldest Hyung, whose comedic exterior often masks a fiercely protective and grounding presence, was already physically attached to Jungkook's back. It was a familiar posture, Jin wrapping his lanky frame around the golden maknae in a half-joking, half-exhaustive piggyback that signaled the end of a grueling tour stop. Jungkook, built like a fortress from years of intense physical conditioning and unwavering discipline, effortlessly supported Jin's weight, his expression a mix of weary amusement and laser focus. Jin whispered something into Jungkook's ear, a muffled joke that usually would have triggered Jungkook's trademark bunny smile, but tonight the atmosphere shifted drastically. Jungkook's eyes darted past Jin's shoulder, locking onto a distant figure standing by the prop trunks. Taehyung was standing alone in the shadows, tracing the frayed edge of his leather jacket with a quiet intensity that felt entirely detached from the euphoric chaos of the dressing room. Known for his unpredictable artistic temperament and his deeply sensitive soul, Taehyung had spent the entire concert moving through the choreography with a haunting, melancholic grace that had set social media ablaze before the final song had even ended. As Jungkook caught his gaze, a silent electric current seemed to pass between them, a split-second exchange of micro-expressions that spoke volumes to anyone trained in the subtle language of human psychology. Without warning, Jungkook executed a sharp, decisive movement that made Jin stumble slightly off his back. The eldest member let out an indignant squawk of surprise, but Jungkook was already moving forward, stepping past the startled Jin with an unnerving sense of urgency. What Jungkook did next sent an audible gasp rippling through the handful of staff members lingering in the hallway, and it has since become the central mystery of the entire world tour. Jungkook closed the distance between himself and Taehyung in 3 long, predatory strides, his jaw set in a hard line that contrasted sharply with the playful banter just moments prior. The cameras rolling from a distant, fixed security angle captured the exact moment Jungkook reached out, his large hand gripping Taehyung's forearm with a firmness that crossed the line from casual greeting into something intensely confrontational. Taehyung didn't flinch. Instead, a slow, enigmatic smirk spread across his lips, his chin lifting in a silent challenge that dared Jungkook to go further. The internet erupted within minutes of the leaked footage hitting underground forums, sparking thousands of frantic video essays dissecting whether this was a playful prank or the boiling point of months of hidden touring pressure. But to truly grasp the weight of this moment, we must zoom out and examine how the rest of the members reacted to the epicenter of this sudden emotional earthquake. RM, stationed a few feet away near the costume racks, paused mid-sip from his water bottle, his sharp eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation with the quiet, authoritative weight of a true leader. Namjoon didn't step in immediately. He understood the volatile chemistry of his younger bandmates better than anyone. He knew that forcing peace between Jungkook and Taehyung during one of their artistic crescendos was like trying to contain lightning in a glass jar. Instead, RM subtly signaled to J-Hope, whose perpetual sunshine energy had been working overtime all evening to keep the collective morale from dipping into exhaustion. Hosek smoothly pivoted on his heel, his bright neon sneakers squeaking against the polished concrete floor as he stepped into the peripheral vision of the 2 squaring off members, flashing his signature blinding smile and launching into a loud, exaggerated recap of the concert's final dance break. It was a masterclass in deflection, a deliberate tactical maneuver designed to diffuse the mounting tension before it could spiral into something irreversible. Yet Jimin, ever the empath, could not be so easily distracted. Sitting on a low flight case nearby, Case nearby, while getting his heavy stage boots unbuckled by a stylist, Jimin kept his gaze locked firmly on Taehyung's hand, where Jungkook's fingers were still wrapped tight. Jimin's shoulders were tense, his breathing shallow. He knew the internal battles Taehyung fought daily, the crushing weight of public expectation paired with the relentless pursuit of artistic authenticity. Jimin had spent the last 3 hours on stage watching Taehyung's micro-expressions, recognizing the telltale signs of sensory overload and emotional fatigue. When Jungkook tightened his grip just a fraction of an inch more, Jimin opened his mouth as if to intervene, his voice catching in his throat before he could utter a single syllable. Suga, resting his eyes against the headrest of a leather sofa in the far corner, didn't even need to open his lids to feel the atmospheric shift. Yoongi's intuition has always functioned like a finely tuned seismograph. He felt the tremor before the fault line even cracked. Without shifting his position, Yoongi murmured a low, raspy sentence into the quiet room, a dry observation about the acoustics of the stadium that sliced through the heavy air like a scalpel, forcing a brief collective exhale from everyone present.
The brilliance of BTS as a global phenomenon lies precisely in these high-stakes, unscripted human dynamics. They are 7 distinct individuals from vastly different backgrounds, forced by destiny and sheer talent into the most intense pressure cooker in modern entertainment history. When Jungkook looked back down at Taehyung's hand, the defiance in his eyes softened just enough for a flicker of profound vulnerability to break through. Whatever was said in that silent exchange, whatever heavy secret or unspoken exhaustion passed between the group's 2 most scrutinized visual powerhouses, remained locked behind closed lips. But as the clock ticked past midnight, and the staff began packing away the glittering costumes, one thing became abundantly clear to every hardcore fan watching the frame-by-speed frame breakdowns online. The narrative that BTS is merely a manufactured product of corporate perfection is utterly dismantled by moments like this. The raw, unfiltered friction, the protective instincts of Jin hovering in the background, the tactical leadership of RM, the empathetic radar of Jimin and J-Hope, and the grounded calm of Suga all converge to create a living, breathing theatrical drama that real life simply cannot script. And as you sit there watching the replay for the 10th time, realizing that one tiny overlooked glance between Jungkook and Taehyung completely rewrites everything you thought you knew about their off-camera relationship, you understand why this video is keeping millions glued to their screens until the very last second. As the initial shockwave of the backstage confrontation reverberated through the fandom, digital detectives began dissecting every single millisecond of the footage, turning a fleeting moment into an international cultural phenomenon. The sheer volume of engagement shattered previous records, sending search algorithms into overdrive as millions of dedicated followers demanded answers. To comprehend why this specific interaction between Jungkook and Taehyung became the focal point of an entire era, we must look closer at the intricate choreography of their collective lives, where every movement is scrutinized, amplified, and translated into a dozen different languages within seconds. Jin, having finally managed to slide off Jungkook's back, stood adjusting the collar of his oversized hoodie, watching the aftermath with a complex expression that blended elder wisdom with lingering concern. Seokjin has always played the role of the invisible glue within the group, using self-deprecating humor and physical clowning to deflate moments of high tension before they can curdle into genuine resentment. By clinging to Jungkook's back just moments before the confrontation, Jin was not merely engaging in playful antics. He was actively creating a physical barrier, a buffer zone designed to insulate the younger members from the crushing weight of their own notoriety. But even Jin's legendary emotional intelligence couldn't completely shield them from the friction that arises when 7 perfectionists are pushed past their physical and psychological limits. Across the room, RM was now actively debriefing with the production crew, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs as he ensured that no unauthorized recordings of the backstage argument could find their way into the public domain, a futile effort given the microscopic scrutiny already taking place online. Namjoon's role as leader is a masterclass in diplomatic survival. He has to balance the fierce independence of artists like Suga and Taehyung with the hyper-competitive drive of Jungkook and the stabilizing warmth of J-Hope and Jimin. When RM finally turned back toward the center of the room, his eyes scanned the space to ensure that the fragile equilibrium had been restored. Taehyung, meanwhile, had broken away from Jungkook's grip, his expression shifting from a challenging smirk to a mask of unreadable calm. He walked over to where his personal acoustic guitar rested against the wall, gently running his thumb over the polished wood as if seeking tactile grounding. Taehyung's journey within BTS has always been defined by a deep, almost painful artistic yearning, a constant battle to express a mind that operates on an entirely different frequency than the rest of the world. Fans who have followed his career trajectory from the early days of raw, unpolished debut tracks to his sophisticated solo releases know that Taehyung experiences emotions at a volume that few can comprehend. When Jungkook grabbed his arm, it wasn't an act of aggression. It was a desperate, non-verbal plea for alignment from the one person in the group who truly understands what it feels like to live inside a perpetual fishbowl. J-Hope watched Taehyung from across the room, his bright demeanor settling into a quiet, supportive stillness. Hoseok knows better than anyone that the sunshine he projects to the world requires an immense amount of internal fuel, and seeing his younger brothers struggle against the invisible walls of their success always exacts a heavy emotional toll. He walked over to Taehyung, offering a silent nod of solidarity, no words needed, just the quiet confirmation that they were all fighting the same silent war. At the same time, Jimin had stood up from his seat, shaking off the physical weariness that clung to his limbs. Jimin's connection with both Jungkook and Taehyung is the stuff of legend within the fandom, a complex, deeply intertwined triangle of fierce loyalty, mutual admiration, and occasional emotional turbulence. Jimin walked over to Jungkook, who is now staring intently at his own boots, replaying the interaction in his head with the ruthless self-criticism that defines his work ethic. Jimin didn't offer empty platitudes or forced cheer. Instead, he simply rested a warm hand on the back of Jungkook's neck, applying a firm, grounding pressure that forced the younger man to lift his head and breathe. It was a wordless communication born of a decade spent sharing tiny dorm rooms, sweat-drenched practice studios, and stadiums that stretched out into endless horizons of glowing purple lights. Suga, finally pushing himself up from the sofa, walked slowly toward the exit, pausing just long enough to throw a dry, characteristically sarcastic comment over his shoulder that broke the remaining tension in the room like fragile glass. Yoongi's uncanny ability to inject deadpan reality into moments of high emotional drama has saved the group from countless internal crises over the years. As the door swung shut behind Suga, a collective chuckle rippled through the remaining members, effectively resetting the atmosphere and allowing the heavy clouds of tension to finally dissipate into the sterile backstage air. Yet, as the camera feed cuts to black, leaving millions of viewers staring at the final, lingering freeze frame of Jungkook's hand resting against Taehyung's jacket, the true brilliance of the narrative reveals itself. This is not a story about conflict or division. It is an intimate, unfiltered testament to the unbreakable steel spine of BTS. They are 7 men who have grown from frightened teenagers into global icons under the most blinding spotlight in human history. They fight, they cling to each other, they challenge one another, and ultimately, they protect each other from a world that demands perfection at the cost of their humanity. As the view count climbs into the tens of millions, and the comment sections overflow with impassioned debates, theories, and emotional breakdowns, the real takeaway becomes crystal clear. Every tiny detail, from Jin clinging to Jungkook's back to the intense, wordless standoff with Taehyung, serves as a reminder that the magic of BTS lies not in their flawless choreography or their chart-topping records, but in the raw, messy, beautiful reality of their brotherhood. And as you watch until the very last second, waiting for that one final frame to yield its ultimate secret, you realize that you aren't just watching a K-pop documentary. You are witnessing history unfold in real time, frame by analyzed frame, keeping you completely captivated until the very end.